They'll shut up when we start.
The planet's United Federal Government should sustain to increase its space-based climate monitoring capabilities. Contention 1 is more base real cause extinction. Morgan 09, according to nuclear fire, may see avoided a short period of time. Extinction by fire not as fast. From Earth does not realize the temperature is rising. The frost price from just the heat sneaks up until it realizes the temperature is getting too late. The frog dies. Global warming is verified with 12 years of scientific research confirms stronger scientific consensus. Is burns can cause everything frozen, melting rainfalls, everything becoming cold, less rainfall, hot things being warping. Less action is taken. Temperature rise 8 degrees, melting fluid damage when coastal areas, Earth and its atmosphere reaching a tipping point. 12 maximum desert global tipping could disappear. It takes like smoke leaving exposed heat before the century. Billions will die. Positive feedback looks like the warming conditions, stressing persistent. Are people slipping from say entirely different chains, vulnerability, accumulating, get a shock and extra change. Zero approach to expand the analysis of yields or purpose of flock of tons of greenhouse gases. Scientists worried about permafrost because the thoughts release of gas accelerating, keeping vicious feedback. They cause warming waves for both to be tipping point. And once we learn to find things into a no rating, able mutated creatures might survive. All purpose civilization might mutually consider finality at all. It's death of countless and fourth generation fate of Earth will not make the term real continue gamble with our future while time stay consider survival. And it's real and humans are causing the emissions outweigh. Action is key. If Patrick and all those things every year since 92 is 20 warmth over independence are rapidly oceans compared with models. A scientist possibly identified human beings for level 4 carbon dioxide higher than any time. The last 150,000 years oceans are 20 times as much heat that should increase water temperature. Like outside the bounds of natural variation, right? You come to your march human finger for scientific natural and human drivers of sophisticated battle tongue war. Drive your human activity increase emissions system of warming because emission trap. Human temperatures cold because less ozone and human is changed to account for more than 80% temperatures rising 1.4 degrees most warming caused by human activity and account for the occasional cooling minor fluctuations. So now the emissions far outweigh the tribal aggression production a small window to avoid danger warming provide generations to the sustainable world. And Earth monitoring is key to international cooperation, provides data and uncertainty. That's solution to all intent. Observing the great human activity to contribute to climate change, turning sense of action, ways of understanding climate change, early stage science and geared toward pivotal things within the human rather than decision-making risk, provides accurate information, states observations are needed, uncertainty, the ability of adequate Earth observation data reduce uncertainty, allow possibility to determine whether mitigation and adaptation policy are having an effect, creative provide information, cooperation, all needed to reduce uncertainty, region agreement, reduce treaty is complicated because of scientific uncertainty, advanced laws to include climate change, our requirement, driver, context, and national, international level countries, or government, how to ensure decision makers have access to information necessary to effective policy, represent opportunity for America to demonstrate coalition, negotiation, coping, and freedom because of difference how to share, burdens, coping, and freedom, U.S. opportunity, U.S. powers to engage other nations. The status quo efforts are obsolete, climate change knowledge necessary for action, loose all intent. There's unequivocal evidence worth this warming, there's shortfalls in data, beach management, inadequate we cannot determine the scope of this change key areas. Climate change occupies a central place in the global agenda. U.S. grade across the provide data, government will need to policy, solving climate change, so play a central role in assessing climate change. The part data can find consistent global duty, the relative use, so that's really works for past. Their service like lack of high sense of rational enable predictions, accurate solutions, etc. Programs will feed underfunded. There's opportunity to use the international effort to structure most use in an active space of grace need demonstrate leadership, ability to cooperate, will influence bolstering capabilities should be the goal to address climate change and rebuild U.S. leadership. U.S. should increase its space sense of carbon monitoring, and it's key to climate leadership. Lose it all intent. Progress making adapting for countries agree coordinate climate change to offer opportunity U.S. to engage on the nation challenge not only U.S. well positioned because sitting in space and scientific capacity and fixes expectation that should show the burden commitment building space and further demonstrate U.S. leadership the world respects and admires. That leads to global solutions. Goals and 9. Every true American beauty turning point where the current trend we hope the U.S. to become the active leader in space or just threats confronting the survival of human species. They inspire U.S. to do lots for the international community and action. Governments worry about their industry becoming unproductive. You go first activities of blocking progress, positive intervention by the U.S. provide the vital catalyst that moves negotiating behind the international interest like the heart of the light passing the long term negotiating there. I mean, different the way U.S. interest converge with global good and reducing emission pollutants from industries, economy, and agriculture and transportation system. The lack of leadership, these other countries will not jump on board. That shepherd of other national doctrine is a good for the global environment. The U.S. the world to propose only speak without the U.S. on board. China and India will not take environmental changes here until America does. The nation doesn't people's leadership in the right direction is in the wrong direction. U.S. environmental leadership can be the means a strong message from all lawmakers. Contention 2 is crisis response. Content said it's a better outdated. It destroys effectiveness and voting intent. Len said it's broken about the nation's better satellite program, but it's only going to get worse until ancient people get back showing our ability to observe Earth from space at the risk of dying from neglect. The federal document is cutting climate monitoring key instruments to eliminate 9 instruments combined with 5-year delay. We're canceling integrated instruments with the nation facing critical gap to the Earth population. More crucial than with cuts of 46 to planet nation ability to understand climate change. We sell maybe limit silence or test for cheap with data to sea levels and moderate potential according to global warming. Scenario 1 is disease and leaching to regular disease border rate advanced controls are inherent outside the room low price and service bacterial evolution casualties and heavy little competition like with no guarantee we will be survive vaccines keep evolving so far new systems integrating up here and the race disease human race is losing the race virus had 2 million year heads are victim home saving not being remarkable emerging virus in the imperial sodium size South East system for 200,000 years such optimism by transfusion into the while passing will break for disease will spread now after the prevention measures will fail. That's 4 to all 11 events illustrate vulnerability large population to infection disease airline travel tends to 100 to untraceable disease population increases displacing pollution agriculture activity socioeconomic sharper complex and contributing to disease nothing has more effective climate change and advanced satellite imaging play mousing effective response infection has research unrecognized agents through the carry out disease may be linked to environmental change far more recent either develop early warning systems through surveillance without monitoring epidemic the real waterborne disease will continue to occur. We could have predicted the occurrence of chlorine in South America in 1991 and interject up a US relate seeing chlorophyll imaging promise for months in advance, but not knowing when to inform workers to stress sanitation and employment mitigation efforts. All this is on extraordinary efforts that disease prevention will fail. Communities consensus disease risk will accept following great proof understanding prevention of the pandemic disease infection shows social climate conditions close to bunch suggests that likely damaging information by mounting severity of disease. Remembers in 1918 epidemic on eventually mass scale requires to adapt cell image right approach with use for exponential transmission. Observable data is key. That's Codial 07. Temperature, humidity, land cover, density, factor, text means that disease involved mosquito ticks implies a responsible disease. Disease will not more deaths than all other causes combined floods and demonstrated environments due to disease conquered by fostering spread. Infection disease surveillance could prevent an outbreak or slow transmission improve methods requiring infection disease sensing technology and show promising results. Cell measurement that use and characterize environment factor tries cell ability to detect anomalous and normal climate patterns that are conducive to bringing disease. The impact is extinction. The cellular technology is key that shine 10 million die every year from gene pandemic with the world at risk of credibility, economy, important use tech that can address data that given by cells and models for disease outbreak. These help make unsafe prevention control as capability should be further developed, able to detect environmental factors, malaria products, and save mosquitoes breed in water, so prevent water diverting, increase rainfall represent pretty malaria outbreak if necessary, where data representing much in areas possible. Scenario 2 is disasters that lead to extinction. Scenario 5 is being a real possible result of disaster rates rated magnitude ocean or the end. The world nurturing place including life, human commonly less likely to bring the end species. I've seen earthquakes now hit the regions of South Asia, much from the vulnerability of the world before the wrath of nature, color decrease the comfort of self-nation, human extinction, human molecular improvements in earth science is key to effective response at history of research in earth science, and oracle insight how officer ocean led the right understanding of our nation, prosperity, improvements, ability forecasts have enormous impacts. Service windows or to allow management to impact the basic hurricanes, knowledge of the oceans, that's rivers are possible climate forecast, need for agriculture, and we can map deformations, earth, and echo region, main during volcanic eruptions, the landside evaporation is essential to exercise all infrastructure balance, critical need to group weather information, much of the world lists in areas that are subject to disasters, suggest that information, speed of relief, other rebuilding effort, effective management depends on better information. Additionally, the plan develops topographic data, which is key. Cellular over hydrogen data, improve forecast, geological habits, survey, neighborhood hazard management, and 5-scale resolution, make this default like with the enhanced satellite countries, theoretical, also science, headwinds, engage such reaching to enable government to launch with the headwinds, data to forecast, volcanic eruption, data, offshore bolts, post data to non-risk data reporting, provides aim to mitigate consequent future problems to benefit NASA can make a unique contribution to develop technology, based in trial coverage, only NASA can deliver the key government data needs to get like this where NASA for research and new models, this fully is where NASA trained make it well qualified. Attention 3 will not impact first, it won't happen to develop not technicalization and intervention, reduce likelihood of conflict, creating clears a cooperative one on the bar, non-political equal situational war, international success, cost and civil level restraint, force rate, cost of war, Chinese invasion, one post that economic cost, international center fire, war crack for peace, and second, it won't escalate. Robinson 1, the main court surface, so enforce only think at low military conflicts and force all sides to come to defense and deterrence to become an antidote to Russian fighters, nuclear strategies of reunion, maintain a peaceful world. And third, no extinction, that was not nuclear war, not meaning the war before is no scientific extent, the hypothesis of the will of our way to research and add atrocious piece of science, powerful things to provide how the research said against the disaster for the ways to the war package over 10,000 megaton about pressure on 1970 the words were worst example of misrepresentation in science. They follow not collateral and average deaths with far previous ongoing real access follows up to state levels in 18 days. It's not permanent. People live outside the area, but by today's weapons are claiming the war is struggle.
Okay. Just a preface for what's still being, I could put a few dots on here.
No problem.
Okay, let's talk about the first piece of evidence you read in the one I see. In the underlined part it says this, and I'm going to read a rather long quote. Acting into nature to transform natural processes brings about endless new change happenings whose eventual outcome the actor is entirely incapable of knowing or controlling beforehand. The moment we started natural processes of our own, we not only increased our power over nature, but became more aggressive in our dealings with given forces of the earth, but for the first time have taken nature into the human world and obliterated the defensive boundaries between natural elements and the human artifice. What are these defensive boundaries and how have they been obliterated?
I can't say I understand 100% what your quote says, but from my understanding of it, it was talking about the fact that right now human nature is destroying the environment at rapid rates, and that I'm not sure. Can you clarify the question?
Your evidence says that breaking down the defensive boundary between natural elements and human action, between the world around us and our manipulation of the world around us, breaking down that boundary is bad. But how have we broken down that boundary?
How have we broken down that
boundary?
What
is the boundary?
The boundary, I mean, it's not like there's a theoretical boundary of what we are doing to the environment.
So what is the boundary between humankind, human actions, and nature?
What do you mean? There's like a distinction between the two?
Yeah, what is it?
Well, obviously there's things that make different, but the thing about it that makes it different is that we are a biological being that is affecting another biological.
Okay, so we should not affect nature. We should not change nature,
well,
correct?
Not about not changing nature. I don't think our evidence would agree to that. It's talking about the fact we should not try to pillage and destroy nature.
Okay. What constitutes the destruction of nature?
Destruction of nature? I mean, if you want a specific scenario, I'm not understanding the question 100%.
What constitutes the destruction of nature? If I step on a flower, grind it into the ground, and it turned into a brown pile of mush. Is that destroying nature?
That would be an example of destroying nature.
Thank you. Your set of meta-evidence indicates that extinction has been a possibility, disasters of huge magnitude like the Indian Ocean earthquake and the killer waves it's gone, and that will take out the entirety of human civilization. Your Stoppler evidence indicates that it would allow that topographical data would allow us advanced warnings so governments could respond quickly. If these disasters will take out the entirety of human civilization and truly cause extinction, where do we flee to if we have advanced warning?
I mean, our evidence isn't talking about like one huge tsunami that wipes us all out. It's not
Well,
talking
then
about
how does it
one
cause
huge
extinction?
earthquake. I mean, it's obviously like not one big event, but there's
So it obviously doesn't cause extinction.
a
So
multitude.
then how do you avoid an extinction
Yeah,
level
again,
event?
a multitude of natural disasters can lead to extinction.
Okay,
It's
so
not as
how
if
do you
there's-
avoid an extinction level series
Yes.
of events?
Our evidence indicates we'd be able to respond to these hazards before.
What technology do we have that can stop like 15 earthquakes
Yeah,
and kill everyone on Earth?
If there's like a huge tsunami that engulfs like all of Asia,
So I
then
have
we
one
can
more
move somewhere
question. How
else.
do you contain the spread of diseases? It says disease surveillance could slow transmission. Do you
Our-
like keep all the diseased people in a pen?
No, our evidence indicates pretty specifically that we'd be able to stress sanitation measures, which mean that
Yeah,
people
but what if
with
someone wants to
disease-
board an airplane and go to another country and they have a disease?
Well, our evidence indicates we stress sanitation so that disease would not even occur.
No.
I must bypass the glass.
Yeah, there's not.
First of all, spending consumer committee will successfully find compromise house for the island of the committee as we think in favor of the included compromise membership. So, everyone cross out for box carry. Government, I know, moderate, so they don't want to see the comments fail because we trigger. Housing programs is providers are given a state like compromise with the plan is vastly expensive tourist cruise. I write a lot of affairs with 30 billion cost for let's say this launch costs half a billion. The launch costs for 520 billion. The selling, but in order to the source money wise, money foolish, there is more money to such a story. Those are great. And I'm sure moderating satellites maintain compromise spending is a red light and star. And where you know, those cars were reaching target funding. That's where the bunch of the way drivers were given the was they money the federal just found in Roman that's like the increase the share was cover selling link is procedural can several money under BCA today trigger sequestration cuts FRA and government services revenue spending rate short those we're going to go for the federal budget Congress likely for to do a sort of small substitute create BCA plus two like promote sending for those funding questions up so we need a budget over the future going to have on the cost over the defense and sequestration cuts to defense take global Germany dollar that would be the future of our force will be the defense and super for our future our green defense first for was a great have mentioned the full ownership Germany sequestration for the last like the American climate initiative builds consequences of that and other commands are all the force we are going to force as well it is us to be the president such a like no it was all the short video being forced to write good and encourage our service nation reality for the worship it was really very far the cousin you the result of their forces about the sense of no story will stretch many American power the result and it can control these British men and service safety and on a regional cluster military military and university global trade on the good it was sort of more difficult so one of my game because they had to go check she wants to go to the power shooting but it was only more than last piece of for a loose find a solution to regional economy radio social and breaker rules wave session and don't to the result mechanism of the aviation trade and complex issues around the global institution make it way to a regional organization that's out there next to top retaliation radiation exploration and no one purely human endeavors as classification takes place is robotic enrichment in independent category space science ICU and that's why the space technology for section space science itself and not space technology and information development expression elements to and human race and far region space and violation the only increase it a lot of mention not human presence easier to one say loud now the Chinese satellites help scroll out through comments and compromise entirely there were the phase 2 ground nothing which started basically connection plus Friday business by low perception based links also next up is the routine to the idea that we can manage environmental problems she touches us from many was a nuclear war and the destruction of the natural recorder and natural and which we are the one management conservation watching manage natural resource high rate which causes to spatial management what makes us a time these rats who are over Americans that must also present our defense and the which of the things also international not working rightly and go to sense for the level will be such a theory but it's the deal as well as murder which will be required theoretical muscle history as we power the street provides some power jobs that's all the ultimate control then we manage everything in technological force about alien master understanding archaeology just as nuclear word source by life to do and here is when Marx and the publication which shows all life another here is that again as in the words of the structure press the message of the distance as only abolishing and it's the setting with drugs in the middle of the technology frenzy damnation and species and such violations of resort and so they know so much cause all the you don't have to provide laws and there is all the defense foundation which I will be and modular construction all the alternative is the existential anxiety in the face of the affirms life and death, the direct assault, all problems for close ontological uncertainty, feel 97, anxiety for the virtual conscious to extreme close, anxiety, as a state of mind which began the world of the self-defense world of virtual, anxiety, respect, and social emotions, family, philosophy, and the amateur, the contingency, the race of lives, which are anxiety, the resistance to such in such contemplation lifestyle is the environment. Since the 17th century, Western discourses of nature have been used to police medicate and present control as sexual diversity as a truth model that dictates only one natural sex, heterosexuality, which then comes to define and shape what nature is the plan and trenches this discourse and stand on in one knowledge of the system linking sex nature that you got to bring up homosexual creation of reputation which nature or you can define sexual the field of sexuality actually sexual corners but homosexual the idea that you reach a sexual or represent parts controversial biological forces or nation is abortion natural sex is reproductive heterosexual penetration. This discourse of Western and nature will inevitably perpetuate current apocalyptic trends. This whole force for amount of species disappear because of who we think we are. This is pulled and any other pictures of the nature and any of social species disappear the definition like other skin months to away from the models of the future conditions and is also less short and less colonizing this way and the alternative queer ecological conception and framework successfully disrupt the affection narrative of a good future of the subject and deconstruct a dualistic ontological distinction there at the root also expression. This is Polkin in 1999. From the intellectual verse of identity theory, which shows the traditional body opposite street, the new dynamic relations with culture, pressure, and the overcondition that which the embrace of culture of the traditional share of life, makes the culture for Western makers of the issue, which question about it, as the dance between the women's whole body, mind, and body on the nature of being and becoming human, and are the trading period of the environmental leadership of satellites cannot self-climate data wasteful, and all negative research system will address them as a function of friends change the supervision of the world with the diagnosis to be the detail, logical planning needs to true like yourself, you is already the leader, whatever. Russian off in 6, instruments of the use in the leadership comes from the universe of the global release of everyone of the mission of the policy about the as a commercial system to remember so many for the last word to shake and sacrifice culture of the universe and taking really many new countries with folks and the Americans only Indian countries don't want the US to lead, rather contribute to it and so the world or the US voters with the rulers of Europe to release this global with the US is back and the US is people really the US should continue to be the world leader cosmic race or the root cause of warming cabinet elements is that with other northern conversations and increasing place for information about the rest of the already sensitive to the so not just so there were with the people were very for with the seal charts and there are these working warming as a fuzzy station height and adaptation tells Michaels and seven we have visions of the they must writing the fiction and it's that much of the rest of the because there are separate than the windows and I spread these without but in this episode there's no kind of technology that could do that can do much better go to the crisis response Spanish. Disease are short-term, they fall to be not examination, 98 units of the disease of a right distribution population, and that's sure over surely short-term research is related to what diseases are cell suspicious also sort of spinal fiber, so its own survival is also over-highlighted media rust, and sex and services reversing during the media and most of our training, and so it's like every time today, he said media recession, which understand what you do, your right time to short, you cannot reverse essential emerging culture, and reason I don't know action health risk also can't solve or you can't solve disaster, you can't solve natural disaster for communication infrastructure. Uploading fiber and our this word is doing the communication system very quickly and our risk was raising our question by the two ways of letting the place of resulting in generators and communication and violence make relief possible low insects with the information to show us the right source or possible only to the roads and the revolution of the communities that were about other devices disaster was extremely if go to the no war contention great power war is likely manageable again man one contains Kagan and then you don't live with the wars of police for even other such statement by the war when I was starting to how to be going with as everywhere of course within your friends to be led or whatever so it seems that it's all really much worse than I think we need to do something that we're bigger than we're going to know to be that this entire thesis undermined and also you could write yes maybe the word short is extinction new science first June and Rob continues to show that I think we'll cover it I think the word there's something about the resource which is that this is what directly plans for in the linear food supply they model show I think we're eventually destroying all life never we want to produce a show and the idea that he's credit we show that they remain as I said in the MRI to be administration of persuasion of questions of what questions of large scale questions over precipitation overarching predictions about the future of international relations that usually wrong the unpredictable nature of our you should err on the side of caution Kagan and so the rest of the examples of such a we get wrong words we got and ways so they were never mentioned for a reason they were not and anticipated. Status of trees.
Conditional.
Okay, let's talk about the queer theory critique. Okay.
Okay.
Which P7 indicates that the alternative would be able to solve the current destruction that's already taking place?
Yeah, it indicates that the root cause of that current destruction is the dichotomy and dualism between the
I
natural
understand you'll probably win a
world and the
root
human.
cause debate, but which P7 indicates
Right,
adopting
so a
the-
rethinking and a rejection of that binary, that dual system between sort of straight, queer, man
Okay.
and woman, soul, body.
I guess
is
more
the
direct
root cause of that,
question.
is to
Can we
reconceptualize
try to
ourselves.
take action to reduce GHG emissions under the alternative?
Sure, we won't be out of the plan happens.
So why are you allowed to do that in the world of the alternative? What different
The
thoughts?
link is clearly not to technology to reduce GHG emissions, it's to your characterization of nature as per the 1AC cross-section and the 1AC evidence.
So what P7 indicates on the alternative framework we would take these actions? Which P7?
The one and the alternative evidence does not outline which actions will take to reduce GHG from the environment. It's talking about a rethinking about the alternative does not necessarily
So we
preclude
rethink
the
our
possibility to take incremental actions to sort of preserve the environment. It's a critique of the way that you have understood sort of environmental impacts of warming.
What's wrong with the way we understood it?
The first piece of evidence that we're putting aside right now, the one sort of bulk evidence talks about how the talking about sort of the natural world as something that can be manipulated and controlled by sort of human consciousness.
Wait,
Creates a
so-
dualism between sort of
so
nature
in
and
addition to-
unnatural things.
In addition, it goes one step further than that. It's the argument that there is something that is natural, something that is pure, something that should not be violated.
Okay.
Constructs that along the lines of impure and pure sexual desire. The reason why nature is pure, the reason why nature is separate,
Okay.
is because heterosexuality is pure and separate, and that necessarily entails the criminalization of everything that is impure, that is other, that is
Okay,
homosexual,
so
that
we
is
cannot-
female, that is.
We cannot like problematize the environment as it is. We can't say that the environment is effed up because humans have caused it and we need to take action. I'm just understanding what you are rejecting with the affirmative. So we cannot say the environment is screwed up.
The way you
and we have to try to stop
characterize,
that.
the way you characterize screwed up relies on a preconceived notion of what is not screwed up, what is natural.
Okay, what is natural about the world in the way before humans came? Like it's
No, that's our argument that we shouldn't make those distinctions and draw those lines between what is natural, when it was natural, and what is unnatural.
okay. So what is natural about what was natural about the world before?
No, that's exactly
Okay, so we shouldn't
our
make those
argument.
distinctions.
Right.
Okay, we have heard those distinctions. Good. Okay, I think I get a little understanding. Top calendar page. Which apps are top of under interpretation people actually run?
Constellation apps, colonization
Constellation?
apps. We
Wait,
just
what?
debated Lexington, maybe the colonization.
Constellation app has like lunar mining programs, which
No,
are
Constellation is based on the Orion program. It's a heavy launch
that's
system
one
to
out of
create
4 programs
humans
on that
to the
interpretation.
moon.
Which app that people run only involves human presence?
Colonization, Constellation,
runs
uses
colonization
minor
apps?
parts. We just made a colonization app, research missions, certain
What-
asteroid mining apps,
who does that
including
app?
human presence.
Asteroid
Lexington.
mining app does not involve human presence.
Yeah, it definitely could.
Definitely could.
Yeah, research missions to areas in outer space definitely include
Okay.
human presence.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah, let me double check to make sure. But I believe it is warming, the crisis advantage, the war flow, T, the first K they read, the second K they read. I don't know, are we
First K is the
Heidegger and
management K.
Call them
Yeah.
Heidegger and queer theory, or
Whatever you want.
yeah, I don't know, whatever.
It's just like nature is fine.
Nature.
Heidegger and nature.
You're gonna have to redo that order.
Yeah, warming. Christ, I do need my floats though.
Like he's not like it.
Warming, crisis, no war. T, Heidegger, nature, politics. Oh, he kind of said.
That's not politics.
It's all. Force it heaven.
Well, nothing always works. That's all.
You did that. That's how you done my job. Okay. All right. Is everybody ready? Arvin is hosting stairs by 2 years for a reason. We have resolved these technological problems. Here's where Arvin is 17 next to me, hundreds of rising carbon dioxide, but only 7% like energy found. Lost radio AV. We didn't find the most not enough battles. That's within that. This is response over one. While more than losing the atmosphere cooling is a myth. McDonough. It's our self-regular. So we said, let's hit a hit. Minutes over the order of the graduation. So we should take into account the dead. With anyways, since we can we suited the instruments are human by still makes them going off the bed message the current temperature record showed the humans are increasing. The EU is not a leader. There's a reason Copenhagen. There's a reason Copenhagen Kyoto failed because the US is on board our entities, and even if some countries don't like US lead India and China do, and they are the largest emitters of rays, it's not a thing. The impact is too small. The matter is not these estimates are shortest magnitude too small. The countries which the effect is too small. So like significant role in current climate change, variation, solar distance, insufficient, there's variation, temperature analysis done. No television perfection temperature. Nothing's about everything related particles of lawsuit. But diligence and directions DC and driving particles from the cartridge not is known as the ionization of potential pathogens at high altitude. So to modify low velocity energy transport of resistance and warming. Here's where we are. It says that every year since 1992 has been in each 20 warming years of versus there's a consensus. Scientists 98% of them conclude, or for that 98% of them conclude, for there it does lead to a market evidence indicates it turns the ocean to ash and makes global agriculture impossible. We cannot adapt to that. It says that the remaining humans would be living on the earth, and the remaining humans would be living on the earth. If it would destroy the ecosystem, it would destroy all of the ecosystems by making the planet too hot to live on. Our crisis, if that crisis advantage is not a short-term impact, our consensus Nobel Prize winning biologist who says that it is a race between us and the pathogens, and we are losing. They will beat us. It is a wonder that we are alive so long. Here's where I've been solved for defense wrong pandemics by demanding lumber 92 the potential of literally tensors and possibilities. Again, it's a nice library where we have defense of this crisis, aggression, progress, approaching anti-evolutionary equilibrium. We won't share the limit with our persons. We can hardly be sure that equilibrium includes the human species in a role preservation running. We cannot lie. Unequilibrium says the cameras and water transfects and do not references are not as running user for many spectacles of Galera. So it's most solution practice in nature stored over head disease. It's most possible mechanism for population examples species who have not seen. Yes, they can have it now. We solve the reasons that these status quo does not solve disasters. They say there would be things like confusions and problems with disaster response. They can see the solar evidence. The plan radically alters these science or hazard mitigation because we know it is coming months before it actually does. It makes it much easier to mitigate it than if we had less than a week of warning, like with Hurricane Irene. Now, war is not an impact first. It won't have an economic reduce. The likelihood of conflict by incentivizing cooperation, use made, coordination, suicide for our claims, not also that war is declined. Second is it will not escalate. Deterrence theory means great powers will not get involved because they know the dangers. Third is it will not cause extinction. Nuclear winter is an atrocious piece of science. We have more qualified scientists we should fall to because they understand the environment thoroughly. T. We mean space illegal of the year population is liberal director to support a secular development. Says hand development refers to these DoD and NASA programs. Geotech development is a component system how to manifest where the operational system you have built NASA is developed in programs with geoscience research program optimizations that will say future federal states and process future of the aspect origins program. It's essential sauce or office error is no risk of installation and predictable layer government definition is more predictable than their science fiction writer guys with both sides for guarantees on negative crown and ground no good after their information they move the core of the top hand reasonability good is good to off after our interpretation is reasonable to search was limited interpretation plus the negative moves the goal opposed to it's with the ultimate judgment mentions this is no less arbitrary than deciding that limits are key onto Heidegger framework is avoiding the issue debate. You allow consequences of plan works to be done by the federal government and our assumptions possible alterations that's been in case ways the falls to our specific extinction alternatives, even if they win impact framework our political action is an impact certificate and they undermine private political action. You are to a second difficult strategy philosophy relationship how to debate philosophical interpretation to determine society needs philosophical figuration is a disaster for political life disaster. God's what's called the great philosophical receptive to liberal been radiating evil influence. This turns KR into US is not without also substitute jazz repulsion is fully everything is available manual political agent are only so many different only benefits fear of political journalism his political practice engagement with political decisions. This is the suspension of political agenda because their identification is all with benefits retreating to negotiation of the response and separate agendas are identified as one circulation and calculation of means that's doing at the end so on they are present relevance understanding of their fight emotion of the tendencies to reconceive political terms of metaphysical policy stepping into the fast political discourse cannot accommodate your questions we but identify under policy questions of economic justice are exiled from the political sphere of this towards the dangers of those investing politics and another practical end and we can act as afterwards pragmatic political action to practically the words of pragmatic political action is a prerequisite to ontology sense only any from the position or division wide down the reference for the outside urban build up for possibility of something that it's chief cannot there was those overrules that top we should go into all the word occur you wrong this resistance presupposed claim to work with South Rail president get us money driving defeating state what's the worst out left and one of these cities will be person to act as South more singular all of us have to have papers are operating up to the imagination and perm to go out and criticize science you can't self-warming rule of the equity of science you should serve there's a competition and competition errors and numbers patients are doing it without using very separate development academic countercultural like about get people sense of the face of the third chain students are using very separate social structures right our route is to save our very much shared and it's a enterprise solution about rules and technology challenges made there is even ratchet work out of passion making your world more humane place and technology is intrinsically tied to being human the all doesn't solve reasonable the average of volume more technology challenges are objectively real sanity because other people political try to consider origin good leaders coming connected to that is making the world on to the other decross-applied framework and the permutations and risk representation of the United States representation with all academics in the industry capable of conditionality is a voting issue and Ace opponents argument and responsibly we cannot make our best arguments for the because they can cross-apply offense and use it against this counterinterpretation this was counterinterpretation one counter source for offense and eco-security self to Matthew to the Matthew to get rebel security multi-method guy that's what the security and acceptance and disguise this countries with a military control movements Solar Government Agency, Office of Strike Loan Security can provide a basic critical session between environmental research and identify these areas which method creators return to submit environmental security research that the evidence also department scattered data rather than receive about the agenda. Now is the time to build environmental security technology is necessary to solve environmental problems. Radical environmental is bad. Berlin in 2009, the demolition technology civilization is a people where nature is worshiped like a totem of some great revolution technology, eradicating disease, plagues, pestilence, and famines. They undermine our quality of life, make us depend on madmen like Saddam Hussein, housing commerce and jobs and sacrifices, spotted owls, and snails. There is no progress which brought man out of the canvas from the outside. And managing nature is key to value life. Learn not sense. Nature opposed goodness itself. Any people is actually changing environment granted his world. The concept of intrinsic values they desire to destroy. Human values things that qualify as good only as far as the values they also value life people. Which and properly as fashion is own life now. Affirms both the blind the alternative overcome the status quo and overcome the illogical plan or cannot overcome the status or can't overcome the plan can't overcome the status quo and pure theory sees the political Christian. 2K correctness is a form of heterosexual results in Christ when this fact not from the right response to broken home or during the design we cannot refuse to knowledge effects of social life harm reason we get started to change square theory like how do I split the personal political experience social life binary was never just actual justice against the illusion of this result in return that I we cannot generate there is no magic world where after comes we imagine lose man and movement of case media forward they fail to mobilize rescue movement because it fails to use the curses that are resenting studies because the importance of social peace that is present in the leadership to take on this victory attending the worst of politics and activism developed of course there is not a replace with committing to spell the nation set is often specified to small groups expression of that is regulate of literature cultural studies and psychoanalysis and skills obviously leads to distinction about nice outcomes that are because that was something much more about disease and happy episode of this only liberty from politics and this kind of religion or Israeli available attending also section politics are inside of the sphere or say military versus the hundred places of religion will lie up there strictly south
Just go for that first.
okay my words. The Japanese and Freeman said that American culture purpose will define a foreign possession without the other. This is the British second word is really short since the Americans it is related to the Mexico State which is world activity the next one is good as American kind of solution to come to France essentially or large than British American side to as Europe 3 times much you have a simple answer as military power. The US completely dominates the continent invulnerable to invasions which is military overwhelms us with everything. Navy controls all the oceans world every ship goes to the gas and settles movement is not able by the US Navy the US good NATO becomes US controls energy or opposites the was a war factor to civil military political economic military political power occurred not our good was downgraded a few weeks ago did not cause impacts and nowhere Jamie's unnecessary couple time purposes of the various national trade routes and capital systems from the energy comes mitigation board factors security managed line up with the state services to do 7 common rock for 3 the focus is critical to discussing and Germany doesn't solve war resident not US because that the practice is the American battle service though longer just a good policy that's the world economic war great pressure from the African war and comes to the world and space spending now because 9 Obama let's work with court practice short of Obama saying we're making good help today then all the that's when we all the GBS HJ budget is the conversation how much already come to military government with how much is
Budgets have already cut.
also, budgets have already been cut. That's going to be cut like $800 billion for the military, probably trade line.
Wait, is it moving?
Yeah.
We'll take a second to just
Okay, the first peer story you read on case says that it's talking about satellite data that already exists and say the findings show that Earth is experiencing. Why is the plan key?
There is data in the status quo from satellites. There evidence indicates that satellites in the past have misinterpreted data because of problems in how we use it and how we process that data.
About climate models
that's why we read very recent.
Earth is now absorbing nearly 1 watt more than it releases, and the plan.
That's why we read very recent evidence in the 1AC that says climate satellites have been cut. There will be a several-year data gap in our ability to predict consequences around the globe.
Okay, so then when these existed, why didn't it leak international?
Because it wasn't the same sort of deal. It wasn't
2007. What was different about international climate?
I believe it's our Bohan evidence as well as multiple pieces of Lewis evidence indicate that the distinction of the type of sensors and technology that these satellites use.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about T quickly. Your J evidence is a definition of development. Which piece of evidence is a counter-interpretation of space development?
It is a counter-interpretation of space. It's NASA's definition of development.
Okay, so then would this interpretation allow apps that just like do stuff solely based on Earth? What?
No, our code says these things are topical and these things are not.
Right, it says developing is producing technology. So theoretically, an app could just produce technology.
No, it's technology for launches into space.
Beyond the mesosphere.
Beyond
that
the
argument. It's like no app would be able to do that because they would not be topical.
Okay, you read the Stentori evidence on Heidegger. It says that political action is key to prevent nuclear war, because ontological investigations don't do it. Nuclear war, is that a bad thing?
Nuclear war is just one example. Is would we be willing to let some horribly bad thing to occur? And this card uses.
No, it's talking specifically about an all-out nuclear war happening, and it says that ontological investigation.
Well, yes, you're correct. It uses the example of nuclear war, but it says that.
So why does that matter if nuclear war is not an impact?
No, it's an example of something you prioritize, like ontology and other things, over very bad impacts that are obviously bad for the nature of the environment.
Okay, your evidence says that your Scarborough evidence is from August and says that cuts have turned the service into a hollow force. Do you have any evidence about the super committee or budget cuts now?
What? No, that evidence indicates that it's already cut, right?
That was from 2 weeks ago, saying there was already a $350 million cut that has hovered out in force.
It says Mr. Panetta has been urging Congress to make a cut. Do you have any evidence that Congress has passed this?
That is a factual. The debt ceiling cut $350 billion from the military budget and $500 billion more responsible.
You're just kind of standing there. Is impeding.
Yeah, I'm just going to combine these into one. That's cool.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it goes flat. 6.
No, we have to leave it.
Oh, it's at 8.
It's like 8:30.
Oh, okay, then you should be good.
Hopefully, yeah.
Because that's after the traffic is off. You'll be able to.
We're crossing our fingers.
So I borrow your stand.
Yeah, can I borrow my laptop back?
Here, thank you.
You can only borrow.
jump me this card.
That one card.
You'll definitely make it. It's only 4 o'clock.
And there's just a bunch of us who might.
Somebody just double times themselves.
Isaac, I'm just going to email you this.
Speaking of, I actually thought you were
No, we
I
definitely
did
were.
too.
That card?
I did too.
Yeah. I mean, if we didn't talk about case arguments and it decided, it definitely would matter. No, the card was like, it kills Johan, it kills more than tree.
until you got to that part at the bottom, because you were like, they said there's no PC now, but playing popular, I was like, I don't see the double check. And then you were just like, I said, skip it. Second one.
What's this called?
It's the Google Doc. It's like 2 minutes.
Mark, did you send me that card?
Yeah, I did send it.
Okay.
All right. What's the
The order is the crisis, disaster, flow, and then the hydro flow, and then the nature.
Disasters higher in nature.
Huh?
Disasters higher in nature.
Yeah.
almost sounds like a haiku.
Okay.
Even if they win, they make disaster approach for the day. Do not solve the sediment indicates there will be massive global warming. That's not to say that it indicates that there would be super volcanoes and huge earthquakes all over the globe. These are the kinds of things humanity can never solve. The addition of sediment indicate that these kinds of disasters are never enough to dissolve them fast. It doesn't matter whether you get a little bit of humanitarian aid, whether you get the people purified water on a timely basis. You will still kill everyone in addition. They do not solve the reason why disaster funding is doesn't happen now. Where evidence indicates disaster funding is never actually done, which means even if they have the technology and the science available, they will not respond on a natural basis. And they indicate the cooperation across national borders is impossible, which means even if the U.S. has a great kind of modern satellite program, they will not be able to help other countries. And they can't help funding for natural disasters. We can't have shelters now. And so the government even more shy countries to the country, so that's regulation boosting the necessary dominance by response. In addition to this, empirical room, the FEMA aid budget is getting tanked right now because the parts taken this, and then it will never actually get funded effectively. The lack of effective damage resistance structures on Earth prevents effective preparation for one. The government information structures after people to the last month, the subway network, and she found out many different activity, the quality construction showed 770 of the answer of the area and the magnitude of the after relative, very little determinants of data level 2. Verifying around the system, nature structure, subsequent experiments very different to do in a laboratory. Go to the hydro,
we're not going to purposes, contest, competition, not the answer, framework on the elements, framework on the other, framework on the other, but I'll go specifically explain what the arbitrary here particular responsibility, say, political action, see both of these cards are specific to Heidegger's metaphysical methodology. It does not apply to clear methodology on the other hand, even if they try to say justification for the political is specific to the focus on ontology, which not the root code, not fundamental claim of the other critique argument. They say the nuclear railways that is the first of all, this is a fundamental contradiction with the West. Their arguments say when the nuclear railways environmental concerns they will probably win the policy debate because they do not have a nuclear impact. But even if they win the environmental concerns that way, the other argument that is an extra justification for why the critique is germane, why we should focus on the methodology of the additional answer, the permutation and justification for the permutation over on the other. But they say criticizing science and technology means we can't stop worrying. We are not criticizing science. There's nothing about the other critique that is criticizing science. They don't explain why this is naturally thought. I need your timer. Other photo. The affirmative discourse of nature is the epitome of heteronormative environmental ethics. 101 is the obsession with the purity of the unique nature of the natural world is rooted in erotic criminalization of the heterosexual body. In order for nature to become pure, the unnatural had to first become impure, and the original unnatural object was the queer body. You can cross by the cross-sex question about the Morgan Evans. The Morgan Evans directly indicates that the motivation for solving the destruction of the environment, the motivation for solving global warming is because it breaks down the boundary between the human and the natural. When the human when human people stick their fingers into nature, it makes nature impure, it makes nature something that has to be rejected, something that is disgusting and is debased. When we long for the pure essence of the original nature, that is when we can justify question this growth, a heteronormative exclusionary, inherently masculine person, nature legitimizes endless oppression. A truly successful environmental politics can never emerge from such a mindset. This is Zendelin in a one. Queer theory offers valuable insights, direction, change the universal correlation between experience, nature of derived science, reduce the reductive narrative, reductive the right natural, one of the clearest place queer, and ecological charge, and common intelligence, the problem of regulation, that theorization, heterosexualization of the human, and other human bodies, percent of the containment, queer, ecological policy, offer, zero, challenge of the redemption, containment, and implicated, West American, naturally, anti-queer, dualism, the nature is because of possibility of diversity, virus, and challenge, wages, nature, role, white, historically, regular human, such as can make possibility of renegotiating elements of phenomenal racial relations between the self and natural world, such as back, or in self-certainty, full appreciation of the other, addition, erotic, the clear desire goes beyond the hegemony of reproductive policies, and that's what makes it so that we can actually appreciate nature holistically. The only reason why we can destroy part of nature is because that part of nature is viewed impure in the first place. And one is not the sense of objection, president, dissolution, or bodily matters, the others of the others, fear, disruption, justice, real, and do you recognize that sexual feelings necessarily all logical, structure of the story, which has reduction, reason, downstream, sexual life, dissolution, and transformation, the organic body, subject, erotic, and with the other kind of be passed, the implication, speech, immortality, the eruption, eroticism, the other stories, solidarity, immortality, the reproductive action, make love to world about the dissolution, the boundaries between human and non-human separation, the environmental erotic, makes fire, lead, and accepting comes one of the multiplicity of actions, dragging all the cream goes, the unaccepting reproductive penetration, which lack of environmental exploitation, and just this, in addition, there are two can see the terminal impacts of this, being added, two can see the terminal impacts coming out of the one is the first, the total destruction of the environment, and the destruction and genocide of every queer body who is not viewed as normal and natural. This is the root cause of all oppression. The Jews were not viewed as normal and natural in Holocaust era Germany, and they were killed. The queers were not viewed as normal and natural. Reagan allowed the AIDS to spread among the population and killed them. The environment is not viewed as normal and natural. We can criminalize it and dump coal everywhere and destroy the environment in the first place. And just no climate on this environment predictably is a law of the status quo. We win. Our methodology is a better way to engage environmental policies, and it is both a germane and productive question for the strategists. We having critiques is necessary for fairness when we can confront multiple affirmatives on different methodological levels. It's the only way to check back against false squirrely affirmatives and affirmatives that don't send human precedent states. And the justification for the dehumanization and denaturalization of the environment is your patriarchal heterosexual concept of nature. This is germane and necessary. Polka 99. The justification of vilifying sexual minority responsibility and concept of nature of bisexual identity according to the ideology of reduce all over repression to reassess patriarchal heterosexuality. There is denaturalized, thereby dehumanizing the body. Erotic desire, especially not conforming to the appropriation with sex quote. The ideal Western identity, ideological sex, minorities, and variety human threats to blood, the ideological purity, normal sexuality, addition, avoiding sexualism as prerequisite self-equal, and construction of question, important because they investigate of it, inclusion, exclusion, the origin of one, who wants war and value, for person, against integrity, some which very traditional, rationalization, human, human, national, always culturally specific, historically, conceptual production of meaning, with everything goes scripts and all this, essential, intensive, reaching out, text, pre-description, asexual, or historical understanding, yelling, teleology, the word of construction, this, specific, this, historical historically, the social, political interpretation of metaphysical realm, no human being have been able to realistically hope for an edition today. Their argument is ridiculous. The card that we hear is that specific security discourse indicates complete rejection of the political is bad, but we are not a complete rejection of the political. In one specific instance, we indicate that it's better to bring a methodology than to blindly step forward with no and misguided policy action. This is just not beneficial and just no conditional. You'll be in the one just they say you could security is good. This is not responsible. We can still securitize things around us. We can still securitize the environment and prevent the environment from harming us. We would just find that can't classify it according to the natural, non-natural binary. And just they say that technology is key and radical environmentalism is bad. We are not radical environmentalism. We are not prioritizing the environment. Rather, we're just saying we should break down the binary notion that causes the environment right now. They say managing nature that they take for granted the supreme value of nature and this evidence in addition to the criminalization of capital life only leads to more oppression, only leads to more oppression and violence. This is Polka 99. The problem we face with archaic self-replicating systems have to identify position values and interpret the framework based on very old mentally metaphysical general order stories that subspace measuring not even description value relations to elemental world such a framework for these are very over for important towards the technology actually secures place for interesting and the lesson you learn is something personal imperative reinterpret the essentials legacy and incorporation of pressure degree structuring yourself in addition they say permutation do goes first permutation time of this makes every movement target music never actually gain links to links to often just justifies this and kind of 172 or G destroys all the voting issue disidentifies the future and just we win residual link and they have zero self-see addition. We're not saying the alternative can resolve every environmental problem, just a reconceptualization of what you do in this round of the queer theory arguments will be the few parts of the queer theory arguments will be at the top of the 1 hour, but I'll do the 1 hour, but I'll do the analytical work here. There, evidence is not conclusive. Just because we're not a magic approach to rejecting everything we doesn't mean the way it is not a good method. Just they misunderstand queer methodology and the world does as well. We are a rejection of binary thinking. We're not positioning the queer as different from the heterosexual. We're a rejection of all binary forms of thinking. The heterosexual is not any different potentially. Just in the box evidence, not specific. We're not retreating from the political. We're just saying that we are a better way to engage the political in this specific instance. Said we are the box evidence specific to not engage in political. In addition, they say we fail to mobilize movements. You're not about mobilizing movements. We win the framework debate, and you engage the environment through a bad method, which, as shown in the case, there's no nothing that beneficial about voting affirmative.
We'll take a little bit of prep. How much did we have left? Yeah, that's right. I remember. Okay. Stop for everyone.
Okay, so I'm confused. What is wrong with trying to prevent 18 degrees Celsius rise in temperature on the planet?
That's a straw man, and I don't feel I need to answer that question. The argument is not that you solve warming and that's bad. Rather, the way you construct nature is desirable, and the way you construct the destruction of nature as counter to the pure original nature is bad.
So us saying that humans have messed up the environment is, we can't say that.
No, but
It's impossible.
basing that decision on the implicit boundary between humankind and the environment, between destructive actions of humanity and the pure, not destroyed, pristine nature of the environment is rooted on the heterosexual, homosexual dynamic, the, queer, not queer, the dirty, not dirty, good, bad dynamic that characterizes the entirety of Western thought. We should break that down and not make
What genocide
happening.
happens? What genocide happens?
It's like the reason why every single other industry has been able to be oppressed is because of this binary notion that they are less than or well, I can isolate empirical examples in the past of genocide that have your mindset. I can't predict specifically who will kill who, but someone will continue to kill someone else for as long as we maintain this mindset.
I think I read all of your cards, and I did not see an impact. I'm just confused. It's like we're based on a flawed methodology, but if that methodology leads to a good end.
Is the root cause of oppression.
It's the root cause of oppression. So the alternative does what to change everyone's mindset?
The alternative says that you should not endorse an oppressive practice in this round.
Don't endorse an but if that oppressive practice is inevitable, we should try to do things that, or if warming.
I'm confused as to what you think you do about that oppressive practice. You have a very good defense of the fact that the temperature increase around the world is happening, and that satellites can tell us exactly how much temperature is increasing, but you don't have a single defense of the way you relate to the environment.
Except for the 3 cards I'm going to see, and then the 5
which are
impact
not
turns.
at all about what we said.
Except the 5 impact turns.
Which
Which are
are
the
also
2
not at all about.
So saying that humans should dominate the environment is not an impact turn to this?
No,
Why not?
because that's not what we're saying at all. We're saying that the idea that the human and the environment is different is bad.
Okay,
You can still
so if
dominate
we-
everything around you, but you can't make these binary classifications.
If we prove that we should make
Based on
those binary,
the good natural and the bad natural. The reason why you think your card says we should dominate the environment is so that we can preserve the environment, preserve the pristine nature of the environment. If you want to dominate the
Not
environment because that
necessarily.
gives you pleasure, go ahead. But that's not what your evidence, and that's not what your tags, and that's not what your justifications that we pointed out through the entire round indicate.
Our evidence indicates that we need a technological mastery over nature as a specific being to be able to use it for our purposes.
Again, not responsive. You can use the things around you for your purposes, but you can't make the distinction between sort of the pre-existing pure nature and the nature that is being destroyed after human intervention.
Okay, but our
Like,
evidence.
I don't understand why that is mutually exclusive with using technology to extract resources.
And then the spending this up. So can you do?
Bottom of the cake, conditionality, spinning.
Yeah, and all the answer there are no more arguments like final on spending this it'll be at the bottom. So if you want to flow it on that contention, that's possible.
Where is it? What's it doing again? Sorry.
Bottom of the page, conditionality, and
The alternative sauce, Polk 99, there, terms of sorry, it's better run as opportunity when it's something to say, else is usually addressed with the concept of various refers to relationship between two bodies, which applies to all the other effects of rain, from high levels of visible as to provide for research to bring which beneficial to high levels of to roads, corporate, certain different species out of this relation, but otherwise, I think holy prophets are to creatures made of the field like artificial ocean, the other subject goes to visual, other field is like different questions, the other relation reminds of cooperation, negotiation, also we solve binaries, called that analysis for the difference between natural nature and elemental nature, according to the nature of the concept of nature, what is that nature is the most construction concept rather than a reserve of what we consider bodies, whatever the other traditional matters of no, your nature will draw from our reference to the cultural colleagues also.
That causes genocide.
Also, there are causes genocide, Paul Van Nader, sort of which is say, navigations, for example, from sort of ways, published, so we can search the other for any civil like or the one is pronounced the ratings is the universal, the only recognized the most Christian British thing, it's got to go to this line, so we can understand why, as I want to try to understand these two ways, because little shoulders are actually too, it's because we're going to go into the advice from our body, which there's no foreign to our vote, there's no regulars for the modern tradition of conditionality, we get you, counter-interpretation, we get you, condition, obviously, you could only force to each, you have good argument, so you make logic, you make better decision makers smoothly, analyze our notes with great information, processing force makers to analyze men from multiple perspectives, by optional alternative spending, make our policy also education, you always understand, you're from the call from the left right policy, and your education about the core, and code of house, neck, flexibility for last speech, and things like that, things, the most information, our answer, and theory of the true argument, also reasonability, and theory of relation, making it possible, this was your argument on situation, all the substance, and disincentivize, research causing athlete, you also know all that's happening, and as you're going to benefit or re-add on to the camera, also we tweeted, reading kind of would register non-returnable distance or the ones you believe with belief and cheer with just those not it's just conditionality and it's has to be noise force permutation with action matter playing so just have. Just that way towards case power war happens fast and all powers into power nuclear exchange hedges stabilizing and back to parenthesis operate otherwise strong markets conditions for operation because we have more leverage than more large as chain and she has also only herself global warming solutions partner and how we sort of national world of these program power and there's a international regime that are effective there and not the pleasure and should be reduced by much to do the same that not every letter around the right effectively shown and environmental should be given the environmental unification that you US for likewise international world so that you have to do for the version environmental objectives on around issues and opportunities for offensively responsible insurance disease that we work and things are going to quite used to step for that source of the short and environmental integration span these are all one of the environmental issues particularly always correlation necessary time these problems say I say Hedge Neville knows how the free balance is and that card says that Hedge is high and not because of high defense spending and GDP growth of 1 see not only on surface from 5 days going indicates that say sequestration project has slow as a conjunctive result and global drawdown and reduction of our forces signals diminishing result and is a key internal to our Shang-Chi evidence which is about hard power not about economic influence, which is what there are also credit as generates a relevant argument. It's not about economic leadership, it's about defense because as a result of super committee they do not understand well they do not understand that this also group the Hedge work yes it does for us conventional deterrence ensures conventional vehicle to call regional public ensure uniform and vehicle alternative is empowered by that. Interest was in China, Russia, or China wants more than SJ, and she has also interest in democracy and family, which are UB benefits, and then also the Johnny Prince extinction is part of that, and on the youth, and then the request for months of peace, whatever there will be, and on the human civilization, we should end the Lord, should own the civilization play, and the spend the resource of the cups of empire, and social democracy, so human rights, and so, another 100 million of extra short, and sure, what can say, and all the relations of the government of the state will side to encourage come out, so he says the spending is coming down, another just says that Obama wants spending on a rocket project that is the first person that money has already been allocated was under the Constellation money, which was funded for 6 years. They can see the link already know they want our answer to make a strategic decision not to read new links because they can see our say they bring up and says that it costs 100 million at best of the previous choice. Monitoring system proves also this is not the quality that doesn't matter what Obama wants you to concede it. Want to see as I'm dedicated against specifically this group can will compromise now a new as many things compromise. Also he said it's already been cut our projects by month of John Lee. Haven't seen both sets of new events contemplated events on this one matters also their evidence is citing that who wants Congress the Congress does not say to the government also the part that they actually highlight is reference to Jimmy Carter and Jimmy Carter's administration how cuts of that are the military is just empirical for our impact also Warren made hedge funds uniquely triggers the evidence about minor complex polarity is weak also the economy are going to only checks in the world that just down the also working happen for example and the Muslim immigration rights and also that's right and the Roman possible station on the Middle East right that's change which is North Korean rights to say that's one of the other rights the world leading up to the nuclear also the core triggers Charmans is consented assigned it to any case of music cloud cover and nuclear as my newly triggered distinction also go back to I'm sorry critical theory does not kill little arguments around how the news to be made critical theory by policy of the different types of time and that's so on and we'll see zero to the hold about the dark cycle you can famously learn super critical theories go on with progressive Lego project.
No, I read the entire thing. That ends a project. Okay.
I'm going to read the key parts off here. Right. Also, it's probably worth saying that it's going to be after Heidegger, it's going to be on counter debate, and then the case.
Kind of first.
Yeah. These honorable
Really is.
Yeah. Why is it the orange?
Right. We're good. These answers were not going for now the war debate first. Econ is not to ask if I had to be so injured and pension means countries don't want to go forward. Now no extinction arguments and track control exclusive prefer our evidence for okay. It's from MIT professor saying Harvard physics proves their evidence never says extinction, only our evidence is empirics and proves that size out of this info does not turn warming arguments specific that can be infrastructure of space or even if hegemony does not solve exactly pass down cancer disease, even though the war doesn't cause disease, not the same thing as being able to solve disease, only we have prevention measure, we turn things out. We know with Barnett does not say it solves addiction, only our evidence in case of we all extinction. Hegemony fails in the past, our to do one of the sentences that even the past they don't solve it right now. It has like an emphasis on we will spend more hours, and even if it's about Obama wants to prove that he will spend in the future, it proves our arguments on this right now. The call that cuts now our arguments and pretty good on the fact that cause have already happened on this issue would prove that you should go do up to arguments. It says it hollowed out the military arguments talking about this fast, which means should apply. Now go on to repeat. But I'll explain why these answers do apply in the first arguments in the case about what political and pragmatic action. Yes, it's about having, but it's still an impact to pragmatic action, which proves that we win the seat political court. They cannot actually affect real world change proves within the first debate that we win. The cultural results now on the critique science. Yes, you do critique science because right now the hegemonic concept of science is based on the fact of natural binaries. Because that is a part of science right now, you reject all science, which means it's impossible to solve warming. Even though science does not necessitate a binary between warming, that is what our current understanding of science is. To prove you can't even solve warming, means the right will take over and reject that a little bit of science. We take it all with the rest of the debate in science now. On the conditional debate, competing interpretations best. Only objective standard voting down is key to determine reading the advocacy indicator there was abuses around. We cannot read add-ons and other flows because they cross-like critique because we did not understand the critique of full effect. They can use answers on each critique to apply to each other and make sure we should destroy our ability to critique thinking that That comes first fairness. We're distributing best office speeds that increase the likelihood that hits the world that kills. Abstract, each and air after negatives, blocks, or surrender attributes, and fairness comes from people quit. Classrooms possible internally turns education being the world of unfair debate. We can't get it. And statistics prove negative 158% of elimination, 78% of outside society figure that's for us. Quote from Boston Times proves we get now critical thinking is turned because we cannot get critical thinking will contradict advocacies because we're not getting the choice is screwed from the first place. We cannot advocate the thing that destroys and possibly that now info processing. One kind of world probably solves info processing. Also, they destroy Newsweek and 2 Saturday. As information is starting to students mistakes, bad interest, no rating, negation, possible smart decision making, such as other from too much information, decision like fast you are, victim info, paralysis, fire, information, abilities, make art, second decision. We access education better, but they don't. More don't equal more education, only worse for doing and have depth when forced. We access better, they figure project, but it would kill in your seeming article, but only depth would be able to apply it outside. Depth is a better way for Christians for say that's SD 09 super report to the fewer copies than they have an advantage. Those who found 1 month, 7 major topics that were repetitive fair grades on education, but yet when one kind of world solves the rest things, but it's a linear just say truth more depth and that flexibility. One kind of world called, but there's other things. The next side by the arrow counterpoint destroys all possible advances or truths in this flex. You don't need next flex. There's no distinction how many negative flex they need. You don't need to wait. They need to be Westminster world, the unconditional world, and you can roll people in K with one gauge all the time. Not reasonably debate that is totally different. Chop Kelly, and this interpretation is better because competing interpretations is a theory debate. They should be able to defend their thing. Cheering is different arguments. It's different interpretation developed. They have defended their way they're going to do that. While we do have onset straight training, this is not solved because it's still go for what undercover the black and solve. It's about strategies who contradicting tradition out skew. It might be an hour times you, but that's not about strategy which proves that we have unique offense because in the world one conditional world they can't rope it up us and screw it over. It's also about what they justify. Even though they haven't done the round, they can do a consult yesterday and a condition on them saying no debate, which proves it's possible. Wait, not just vote. It's not the same kind of. You do not have to force perms because they can always do because they could be. It also opens a way for impact term between this post also means possibly your offense. Now on the critique of that, on the critique proper for art. Okay, first we just have to find our methodology. It's pretty good on this question. There's no turns case evidence, even if genocide doesn't happen. I hate to say this about warming. Probably always means that it's about who acts warming better. They have access to root cause faith, but they have not actually people turns case debate. Only arguments is positive is the fact that if we win political engagement current, you cannot solve warming because our conception of environment has already been rooted in the things which means fairly solved. There's no way to reduce GHG emissions. Even reformulating our conception of environment or making it one nature does not mean we reduce the positive feedback that's already coming in between warming and so essential risk. Even these fundamental framework permutation solves our rethinking methodology. We just have to prove our methodology is good. There's some fairness. This said, we say we don't get access to our NYC, it means destroy. That's not predictable. It's a interpretation means the amount of alternatives means we can't ever get environmental function. We prove that our methodology is good, which means it's a securitization methodology with these barriers attached. He's going to try to delete all the tech good made, but that's managerialism exactly founded off the binaries. He has made a smart analytical arguments that's not necessary, but we have evidence talking about the technical managerialism and trying to look at the environment as a tool for us. It's intrinsic to be able to use it. Those binaries are necessary to be able to use the environment to fill for these which is key subsidies and all the things we need. Turns out that was political debate. The cure of politics inherently sees political arguments is pretty specific on the fact that it's their political strategy. While it does not necessitate the engagement of political arguments, it's specific the fact that the queer politics does use of political in the way we need to look at the political first because that turns the case because political action is the only thing that makes programmatic political change, which means the queer theory might be able to reform the thing, but dicks like Dick Cheney will not be able to think about the future or try to reform their own environmental thinking.
I'm getting that. Where did it go?
Based on anybody says like any kind of international, something just like
style instead of
taking it down.
like a hazy carpet. Longer than 2 years.
People here want to see that.
You just hurt my soul. When you chose this. But that's true.
Yeah.
That hurts me too.
You always take my school the first year.
I realized that. It's true.
I'm super concerned if you don't see the song. Yeah, I just want to be the first people.
Nobody's just gonna understand.
Somebody did, a long time ago. It's been in Hawaii for years, so.
Okay. The order is going to be politics, conda, or spending. I just wrote politics, that's not spending. No, what I would think of. Condo, Heidegger, and then nature twice. There will be cards that are on paper. Condo, or spending, condo, Heidegger, nature. Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. It's not your fault.
Everyone ready?
We're not going for spending, we'll concede Obama wants to spend, we'll spend this tax code, 90% they can't get out here, but we will concede the arguments that will never get any nuclear war, which means no station just had to see the political except for the environment means the K is only a germane way to engage the political or the only relevant impact of the relevant way is the environment. Go to the economist, good or options for key to critical thinking education, first it's too easy to pick the best arguments to predict the flash drive makes better debate enforcement analysis, argument interaction, second is information processing process to analyze the plan from multiple perspectives, be able to pick the best enforce in the background policy maker, which is illogical, be go the rational decision maker would not have plans as worth successful. They don't have any edge or link into their overload argument. We set a stable ceiling of abuse of 2 counter obfuscations, and that's all. In addition, information overload is the only way to engage politics for today. Couple short position with the readers of political content, have short natural reason, political theory, no so much as that be simplified this way, easily can tendency, political they simple hour to feel free so user, valuable political function stories, not what's supposed to quick effective communication opportunity, the powerful rhetorical letters communicate, so the second is education, 2 is key because uniquely less policy, and critical education is key to real world analysis, they limit out nothing, the affirmative for multiple viewpoints is key to education, and this is the only way to access education. Lewis and Dollar today. Guys, we're into the power of paragraph, got reading, investing, agrees, paragraph, so effective, paragraph, wrong, but got power made, or let's switch to learn, data science, start to see, I'm passing paragraph, really, make opposite, then really thinking, paragraph, going through paragraphs, going to the only practice, present, the guys, offers, help to secure paragraph, recognize, that structure, pros, going through paragraph, methodological, strategy, about strategy, price, education, to intentionally generate a degree of uncertainty, confusing, using contradictions, to alter creative tension, and this is a diss that to the one conduit, argument is the linear net benefit to our obviously in addition, they can see the only care about the framework of the critique for that education always framework because education is the only terminal impact framework. Whether or not a game is fair, you can always know and play monopoly because that is fair as well, but the only unique skill that we learn from debate, the only portable skill is that education about the topic, education about multiple contradictory advocacies, and in addition, they concede the reasonability. This reason why there is no specific impact framework right abuse comes to AR will be only the fact that these two critiques were very similar proofs that we did abuse and they didn't make a single example of how they are contradictory or how we could have calculated offense. In fact, we couldn't because we read in Cincinnati. In addition, the only thing that was different is the alternative, and they we didn't have the ability to cross-play options between the alternative. In addition to any add-ons you read have applied to both critiques, theory and reasonability on T is the same. Good is good enough. Voting on theory, crowd that something we or reasonably fair. me. It's not a good issue. Just they don't have any options. You could trade turn. That make multiple parts. Read out. We wouldn't self-prove it in this way because you impacted the higher K, and then I didn't go for it. Also, it's a couple of teams. You impacted on the higher K, and I had to answer it on the other K flow. Not I didn't go for it. Misspeaking. Also, it's inevitable teams would always just retried. Let me see arguments not returnable. This has that. Concede argument there wouldn't be any neutral errors. So you can go the F strategy to exceed that also has been told that I can get the entire one is we have to respond in addition. You should narrow negative. You speak first unless that outside bad fault and do any studies, and that's not the reason. Go down in addition. Go. They say this was the same test. Not the negative. It's always for the which means that it would just be counted in the lower end anyway. Addition, don't have to relate. They did have one offensive argument on but they answered it very explicitly, very substantially. But a bunch of their arguments are not offense. First, going for the first not offense is the first two pieces of evidence read. They concede that their author is talking about an ontological framework for the entire world that makes political action impossible. We're not saying that the entire world should be framed out ontological. Rather, we should use a particular queer methodology to engage the environment. That's the only relevant impact of the environment. Reason there is no terminal impact to see the political and just they say science is based on binaries, but that is a misunderstanding of environment. Science is based on the binary of true and untrue, but not pure and unpure. Just be pure, unpure binary allows us to make normative distinction about the queer body and genocide the queer body. This is unnormative. This is an impact to our argument. In addition, we do not criticize science. We do not criticize the science of warming. That was made very clear. Question means there's no terminal impact to the warming argument. In addition, we would root cause argument, then there is no external impact to this argument. Go to the nation will hold the 1 hour to what the hold the 2 hour to what the 1 hour said. They not deny they not say bad. They say very much. All they said is the warming is good. That they solve warming, but a root cause argument is the same. A term argument in this again. In this case, because the plan is not explicitly mandate the reduction of GHG gas. If we win, then you are the reason why the environment gets destroyed in the first place. And you not solve that. You can just enable us to know more about the environment, so we destroy more efficiently. Just they can see the thesis of our genocide district, which should act as a tiebreaker for you in this rank. You should not willingly endorse something that will criminalize every single other in history. Has led to the end of the root cause of every single instance of violence in the state of affairs. They see the multiple reason why we are the only advantage link interference because we key checkbacks and laws and the gas are uniquely explosive on this topic. In addition to the same energy realism with they see the reason why this is not applying fact is the opposite of the thesis of our critique. You could dominate the environment as much as you want, but darling is to preserving the environment. The idea that the environment was once pure and now is impure is the reason why we're able to genocide individual bodies, and it's the reason why we can kill people. Well, they say that we see the political, but they can see the brown evidence indicates that empirically no critical project has ever seen the political. In addition, they can see that we turn the terminal impact is because we are the only way to effectively engage with the environment. Finally, they can see the framework to make constructivism is key to environmental sovereignty. One more argument they can see the we don't see the political in all instances. You can engage the political in a ton of different arenas like nuclear war and the concept of the Tea Party. The only thing that you shouldn't engage the political in is in this round until you have reevaluated your relationship with the environment. Finally, they can see the alternative cell by categorizing humanity, human nature relation of symbiosis rather than parasitism. We can break free from the gender methodology and embrace peace.
Only 2 cards right.
Well, the two MVPs, Gonzaga and I think Javier and Eric lost that 2-1.
So it's Georgetown versus Miles and Gonzaga versus Jordan Blumenthal.
How did they do?
They're in the semis and they're debating Andrew Arch and Mark.
Oh, they are so good.
Oh, why is Markov not? Why is he debating?
They
switched things.
Yeah.
That's kind of bad. Or should I?
Yeah, we all just found out this weekend that he got switched. Like Richard didn't tell any of us,
Yeah.
but we heard it from the grapevine.
It won't be that bad. It's not like anybody. All those percentages are good. I mean, switch around. Both teams are going to be great.
What is the other percentage round?
The other one is Gonzaga versus Northwestern Lane and Ryan.
Really did not realize that their other teams are good.
They're pretty good. They just beat Peyton and Arjun from Northwestern.
Were they in quarters?
The 3 Northwestern teams in the quarters.
Yeah, last year Northwestern had 3 of the top 10 teams in their boxing community. Make sure we get that on the record. It's super disgusting.
Don't worry, we got multiple recording devices.
First time I got over from GBS, I said that.
Can I get a copy of one of those? Preferably the video one.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you record all the speeches?
It's like recording us right now.
We got some nice cinematography for her 6-2 though.
It's
Got some good zoom.
It's a shame it won't be on the chat. I'm so disappointed.
You can't do that anymore.
If he ever says look me in the eye, you should see. All right, let's go.
It's kind of.
Kind of. Okay.
Is everyone ready?
Yeah.
No? All right. Multiple conditional advocacies has to be a voting issue, otherwise it becomes a no-risk option for the negative end. Still harms affirmative strategy. We are going for one disadvantage to their counter-interpretation first. It is 2AC strategy 2. We are not able to make our best arguments in alphas because they could cross-apply that, because they could cross-apply them to other ones. Now, the 2R was very good technically, but he made a critical concession. Debate is a technical game that they have lost. He conceded it is not what you do, it is what you justify. Two conditional counterplans means that they could read contradictory counterplan to do the plan. If Russia says yes, and counterplan to do the plan. If Russia says no, that makes 2AC strategic thinking impossible because there are no strategic decisions to be made. It is not possible to win because no matter what you do, the opponents want to be cross-applied to another one. Now, one conditional counterplan solves this back because we are able to leverage our offense against that strategic bond where they kick out of one of the advocacies. If they just had one conditional advocacy, when they kicked that MC to the double bond, we would not be able, or we would be able to leverage our 8 minutes of offense against the status quo. However, because they have two, we are no longer able to do that. Now, this turns education there because there's no discussion that occurs with it, because there's no discussion that the education and debate does not come from David Herman lecturing you, but the K comes from a discussion that occurs within the round. If we win, they make the discussion impossible. That is the reason they do not have their internal education. Education is a prerequisite. Fairness is a prerequisite. Education, yes, education may be the end point of debate, but if we win, they make it impossible to get there. That you should vote affirmative. Now they can see once again they conceded that they is not what you do. It's what you justify. Because even if you do not think there's abuse in this round, then it's completely and totally irrelevant because you have to judge the debate through the lens of what their interpretation justifies. Alright, knows that you are picking between one conditional counterplan and two conditional counterplans. Two conditional counterplans allows them to use our offense against us, whereas one conditional counterplan does not. Counter-interpretation, one counter solves their offense multiple rounds, solves their counter, also rounds, solves their counter offense. Now on the line by line critical, they say critical thinking debate group. At first, it is not that the 2AC has to pick a little bit, but has to pick its arguments that the 2AC becomes impossible. Now, also this does not apply for the negative. If they are forced to read one conditional counterplan, that means they have to think about it before. They have to think about it before the round and have to research it more in depth. He did not explain this argument well enough for you to vote on it. If you vote negative on this, he needs to be able to explain the impacts of using quotes. Building 2 and out info process debate, group it. Their evidence does not respond to ours. Their says that we need to quit communication, not that we need communication. About 10 evidences. Also, our newsweek evidence indicates that a huge process of information destroys our ability to actually understand that education. We have internal education center. There is info paralysis, which means that in a world of also conditional world, it means we win education if it comes for its own. Read into the card R, it's the only one applicable in a conditionality debate. Now, they say logic, but it is not. Yes, they can win. It is most logical, but that makes the debate. If we win, that makes the debate impossible. You should reject that. Say that they have run the thesis of conditionality is logical, not the thesis of multiple conditional evidences is logical. Our counterinterpretation access is all of the look. It is a linear. Negflex and logic are linear disadvantages that that our interpretation solves. Where 2AC strategy skew is a disadvantage that applies to their counterinterpretation, but not our interpretation. Now, education debate group there. The education debate group. But I answered a lot of this in the overview. 2AC strategy skew outweighs it. Now, second is there's no discussion that occurs within the round. If we win, they make it impossible. Now, I'm going to answer a lot of his books. He says that the K says that education outweighs fairness. Yes, I explained that above. Education may be more important than fairness, but if a lack of fairness makes education impossible, you have to vote affirmative because there is no discussion that occurs within the round. Now, they say reasonability, but they can see that the theory is a different playing field. It's a question of interpretation versus interpretation. Also, they have not, they are reasonable. They make debate impossible for the F. They say that they have not cross-applied everything. They say that they have not cross-applied anything, but that is totally irrelevant because their interpretation allows the negative to do that. They say any add-ons that they say an add-on and one would apply to the other. Yes, that only applies to this round, but not to their counter-interpretation. There is the potential to use use often against this. For example, the contradictory console counterpoints now. They say substance crowd output. They say substance crowd output. Or this was at first. This is a new argument. I did not hear it in the 2NC, and if it was not certainly not explained well enough for you to vote. They make substance impossible because the app loses every time. They say reject the argument. I think that was answered above. They say straight turn check. That's true. Only if there is one conditional counterpoint. If there were two conditional counterpoints, if we straight turned the net benefit to one, they would go for the other counterpoint and make it impossible for us to win. They say it's inevitable because of 5 flipping T arguments with evidences are a different playing field. Also, they conceded that depth is better, which means we access education better. It is better to have a depth of which means that we access any of their education better. Also, contradictions do not help education. Their card is about paradoxes of theory. This is not applicable to debate itself. Maybe it's preferable as an intellectual strategy. It's not preferable as a method for educating high school students. He said that it is inevitable because of 5 flipping T arguments, but first he conceded that evidences are a different playing field. If they read a proliferation of very short T violations, you have to just interpret each word of the resolution that would answer all of them.
Time, not strategy.
Also, that's about time not strategies. He says, as bias. We have statistical studies, negative wins more outrounds. Also, this topic is totally neg biased because all the F's in the topic are terrible.
Not going for
this vote. Also, we're specific that
solves everything.
IR counterpoint solves every F on this topic means that this topic in particular is biased. It takes out moral high ground.